The history of Putin, 1952 to present. Born to a factory worker and a Soviet Navy conscript, Vladimir Putin's political exploration began early in life. From a young age, he enjoyed reading the works of known communists Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and his namesake, Vladimir Lenin. That foundation in politics carried on into college. At Leningrad State University, now St. Petersburg State University, he studied law. It was in college that he was first integrated into the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, a requirement of the time. He would remain in the party until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. It was at university that Putin also connected with someone who he would have ongoing relations with for quite some time, Anatoly Sobchak. Sobchak would go on to co-author the Russian Constitution and contribute massively to Putin's rising career in politics. In 1975, just 23 years old, Putin hit the first major milestone of his life, joining the KGB. Throughout a 16-year career that kick-started his ongoing meteoric rise, Putin served in many capacities. He started in counterintelligence before being transferred to the monitoring of foreign dignitaries. After transferring to KGB headquarters in Moscow, Putin received his first mission going undercover. From 1985 to 1990, he was stationed in Dresden, East Germany, where he retained the cover of a translator. His time in Dresden was met with mixed results. Many intelligence experts, both now and then, assessed that the mass of press clippings he and his colleagues compiled amounted to absolutely nothing. Just another confusing chapter in the muddled history of the KGB. German intelligence officers and KGB colleagues alike downplayed Putin's activity, though it has since been claimed that this was done on purpose to cover for Putin's successes in support of the Red Army. Putin had integrated himself so well into East Germany, however, that he had to resign from the KGB in 1991 under suspicion of his loyalty, after which he returned to Leningrad, again linking up with Anatoly Sobchak, now mayor of the city, therefore beginning the second and shortest phase of his life, local politics. Here he served as an advisor to Sobchak, and various sources indicate that Putin may have worked as a taxi driver as well, to make a little extra money on the side. However, as always seems to be the case with Putin, a promotion was never far away, and he became the head of the Committee for External Relations. His role there was to promote international business ventures. That's when the first signs of corruption took root. A city investigation was launched into his dealings, and while the conclusion was that he should be fired, Sobchak retained the services of his longtime protege. A few years later, in 1994, Putin earned another promotion, this time becoming the first deputy chairman of the government of St. Petersburg, no longer Leningrad since the fall of the Soviet Union. While in this position, his political aspirations started to blossom. He organized the pro-government branch of the Our Home Russia political party. His power in the party continued to expand, and less than a year later, he was managing the entire legislative election campaign and rose to the head of the entire branch. When Sobchak, Putin's partner in politics, lost his mayoral election in St. Petersburg in 1996, Putin unhitched from the Sobchak wagon and planted himself at the heart of it all in Moscow, where he would begin the third stage of his life, leader. Another quick rise of power saw Putin appointed deputy chief of the presidential staff by President Boris Yeltsin in March of 1997. A year later, he rose yet again to first deputy chief. His return to intelligence began not long after, with President Yeltsin appointing Putin to the director of the reformed KGB, now the Federal Security Service, or FSB. But his return to intelligence didn't last long, because the Putin star was not one to stay stagnant. Another year into his rise to prominence, President Yeltsin announced that Putin was to be his successor. In tandem, Putin announced that he would be running for higher office, and within weeks, he became the fifth Russian prime minister in less than 18 months. Putin's political ideology emerged even more as he neared the top of the totem pole. An invasion of Dagestan by the Mujahideen and Russia's resolute stance in the face of the Second Chechen War gave rise to even more popularity among the ever-expanding Putin political base. With the people in support, the formerly independent Putin pledged himself to the Unity Party. Just before the turn of the 21st century, President Yeltsin resigned under dubious circumstances. Putin took his place, and as his first act as the president of Russia, he dropped all corruption charges that might have found their way to Yeltsin or his family. Despite this act, a series of criminal investigations circulated, some of which pegged Putin as a suspect, but all were dropped before they could take root. With all signs of corruption buried, Putin won his first presidential election with 53% of the vote in March of 2000. He used his first term to work towards the reconstruction of the impoverished, while simultaneously winning the complete support of the Russian oligarchs, former Soviet businessmen, rich off their spoils of their country, thus securing Putin's base of power. He suppressed all rebellions in Chechnya as it integrated back into Russia, and easily secured his second presidential term in 2004, earning 71% of the vote. Despite continued involvement in numerous bloody conflicts, conditions continue to improve in Russia, with life expectancy and GDP on the rise, as well as improvements to healthcare, housing, agriculture, and education. An independent media, free of state influence, was supposedly established as well, but in 2006, reporter Anna Politkovskaya was shot and killed on Putin's birthday. She had recently received international recognition for her exposure of supposed corruption in the Russian army. As Putin's power continued to grow, he prepared for what was to come at the end of his second term. Like the United States, the Russian constitution prevented a third consecutive term, prompting the hatching of a plan to keep power. When Dmitry Medvedev won the 2008 election, he quickly appointed Putin as his prime minister, where he kept a watchful eye over the Russia he was building. Despite massive protests against fraud in the run-up to the 2012 election, Putin won quite easily yet again, rising to his third term. It didn't take long for former President Medvedev to admit that this was the plan all along to get Putin back into power. Putin's ongoing conflict with Ukraine raged in 2014 with a series of incursions while the Ukrainian political situation was in a state of disarray. Meanwhile, Putin passed referendums adding Crimea back to Russia as he slowly reassembled pieces of the dissolved Soviet Union. This invasion of Ukraine only slowed when Putin redeployed his troops in support of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, currently embroiled in a civil war. Putin's next attempted international intervention came during the 2016 U.S. presidential election, in which he ordered an influence campaign to denigrate Hillary Clinton. While Putin never overtly agreed that he had engaged in election interference, he did admit that it was theoretically possible he did, while also saying that if it wasn't Russia, it might have been Ukrainians, the Tatars, or Jews with Russian citizenship. In 2018 came Putin's fourth presidential election, with a record 76% of the vote. After once again attempting interference in the U.S. 2020 election, Putin's next venture was revamping his invasion of Ukraine in 2022, declaring it a special military operation to so-called denazify Ukraine. It was a movement that has led to persistent frustrations, with Russia unsuccessfully attempting to occupy its neighboring nation, while garnering a slew of global sanctions from the EU and the G7.